What I would like to offer this evening is really about it's about trees and plants. So let me just get my camera set so as you can see me when I'm standing,
Okay.
because trees are reaching out to us. They constantly ask me to get more people involved, and I don't know how to do it. So here, this is one of my attempts. The trees are saying that if we work with them, we have more chance of getting through this time than if we don't work with them. You see, trees are the other upright beings in the world. Yeah. Animals are mainly horizontal. Yeah. But plants grow upwards, and trees have a trunk, like we have a trunk. And yet, trees are the opposite to us. We have lungs inside. The trees have lung-shaped branches outside. And we have reproductive organs at the bottom of our trunk, and trees have them at the top of their trunk. So the tree is like a human being upside down and inside out. There are plenty of other things which also point at this. I don't want to go into too much technical detail tonight. But if you approach a tree out of this respect for it being an upright being, same as we are, then the tree begins to be able to notice you. You see, trees aren't very conversational. They speak in very different ways than we speak. When we speak, we put meaning into words and expect other people to form concepts from that. When trees speak, they put meaning into gesture, and they speak not in concepts but in realizations. So if we are attentive to the gesture that trees are making in any moment, in themselves, in their movement, then we might notice how inside ourselves those feelings and thoughts arise that are not of our own making. And once we become familiar with any given tree, we can notice the flavour of its conversation in a way that we would normally not associate with the tree. So specifically, the trees are saying that in this time of EMF stress, with all the electrical wiring in our houses, our machines buzzing around us, our Wi-Fi, our mobile phones, and then the 5G masts and the 5G satellites, the trees are saying that there are ways of grounding this energy so that it doesn't stress you.
Recording in progress.
If we remain in our thoughts and our human feelings, then the electro-stress can get us psyched up and out into worry, so that it becomes very difficult to live in our bodies. I just need to mark this as accepting the recording, otherwise there's a block in front of my screen. So, electro-stress. And the other option is that we be like a tree and allow ourselves to ground, which is a practice. You see, when we look at trees, we normally think of them as growing out of the ground up into the air. But that's not in fact what happens. What actually happens is that the leaves of a tree are using the sunlight to process the carbon dioxide in the air into carbohydrates in the sap. And the carbohydrates feed a layer that is just under the skin of the tree that then grows more wood and more bark. So the weight of the tree is actually made out of a few minerals and some water that the tree takes up from the ground, and out of the carbon that it gets out of the air. So a large percentage of the tree is really just made out of the air. So you can see that what the tree is doing in each leaf is growing out of the air down into the ground. The roots in the ground from each tree are made out of carbohydrates that have been taken out of the air. So the tree is growing out of the air down into the ground. When we look at a tree and realize that its process is like this, and that it grows longer and further out, more twigs, more leaves, in order to take in more of what's making those twigs and leaves, we can see a kind of a warmth, a kind of enthusiasm in the upper stories of the tree. And then out of that it grows broader and it grows deeper into the ground. And when we think of that as growing deeper into the ground, we begin to ground in ourselves. So when you look at a tree and think of it as doing this rather than that, then you start to ground in yourself. Now, the roots that go down into the ground and draw up the water, the mineralized water, are able to do so because of the fungi in the ground. So the fungi in the ground break down the minerals around the tree into a plant-like form, into an organic form that the roots can actually take up. If the minerals are not broken down by the fungi, the tree can't actually assimilate them. So there is this very important rotting process happening around the roots of the tree. And the carbohydrates, many of them sugars, developed by the tree, taken into its roots, are actually fed to these fungi to encourage them. The fungi are so important to the tree that it even includes them in its seeds, so that when a seed lands somewhere, it's got the fungi it needs to break down the minerals that it can begin to produce its own leaves and twigs. So what we can learn from this is the importance of degradation, the importance of breaking down, the importance of tears, the importance of failure, the importance of not being good enough. It's great when we can sit down and say, yep, that's something I failed in. That is something I haven't succeeded. That is something that is breaking me down. That is something that I can't cope with. Because when we do that, we enter into relationship with the dark forces of the earth that want to feed us. And as long as we're saying, no, I'm all right, I do well, I'm a good person, we cut ourselves off from the food that the ground wants to give us. So we see in the tree this example of grounding and accepting the darkness of one aspect of our lives, as well as the growth into the light and the air in the other aspect of our lives. And the tree wants to give us this, but it can't if we won't listen. So in order to listen, we need to slow down. And in order to slow down, we need to shed the thinking that's rattling around in our heads. And incidentally, if the tree is an upside down human being, then you might think that we have roots in our heads. And you can see that a tree, the root ball of a tree, contains the finest fibres of the tree. The twigs are fatter and more colourful than the finest twigs are fatter and more colourful than are the finest roots. The finest roots are hair-like. Yeah? So deep in the ground, the tree has hair. Grey hair like mine. Yeah, we call grey matter. the brain material, and the finest tendrils in the human body are the nerves. Yeah? So the finest blood vessels are much fatter than our nerves are. So you can see that the root material is like nerve material, and when the tree is upside down, it is indeed allowing its thinking to drain away into the earth. So we can do that. We can stand in front of a tree and just give thanks and notice the strength with which it is growing into the earth and allow everything to fall away. The geomancer Marko Pogutnik sets a lovely exercise which he does whenever he's working with, well, certainly with other people. He says before every exercise we do to connect with nature and the nature spirits, before every exercise we do this clearing, and after the exercise we do this clearing again. And the clearing consists of simply standing there for a moment, coming to center, just finding that quiet center out of which everything flows into what we think we are. Coming to center, and then from center allowing everything that is in your aura to just fall, to drain down, to fall like sap falls in the tree down into the ground. So everything falls off you. And when you've allowed that falling to happen, then you open up to the lights of the sky, the sun, the moon and the stars. And we know from biodynamics that the sun, the moon and the stars are all important to the plants. Most science only thinks of the sun as being important, but finer sciences already detect, as any biodynamic gardener knows, the influence of the moon and the stars in the plant's life. So, as if we were a tree, we open to the sun, the moon and the stars and allow that light to fall into us. So just again, coming to center, allowing everything to fall off us, opening to the light of the sun, the moon and the stars, the lights of the sky that fill us, and then noticing the boundary, establishing the boundary around us. So at about the distance that your arms stretch out, there is a boundary around your soul. And that boundary keeps you safe. And yet that boundary is a fragile sense organ. So while being at one moment something protective, it's also something receptive. And this boundary is incredibly important to us, that we are who we are because we are not falling out of ourselves. So you re-establish your boundary. So those few steps of coming to center, allowing it all to fall off, accepting the lights of the sky and re-establishing your boundary, those are things which refresh and ground you at the same time. So because I'm tree obsessed, I like to connect that to trees. So I see myself as autumn and the leaves falling off, spring and the sun coming out, the quiet wood at the center of the tree that holds it up. The wood in the center of the tree is not growing, the outside of the tree is growing, the twigs and the leaves and the roots are growing, but the center of the tree is just standing there holding us up. So there's the quiet center, yeah, and autumn and spring and full summer, the boundary of the tree is established very much in the pattern of her leaves. So there's a very valuable exercise. And if you go to a tree and you greet the tree with awe and respect, that this being has been standing there and reproducing herself for so many more millennia than we have, and in doing so has been protecting our development. Most early cultures emerged from the forest. We emerged from the forest onto the plains, into the coasts and places like that. But the forest is the cradle of life. It's the cradle of life for the plants and the animals and for human beings. So the trees are really lovers and protectors of us upside down brothers. Those of us who have our branches onto the ground instead of having roots into the ground, and have got our roots connected to the heavens and are trying to conceive new ideas the whole time. The trees are really supportive of us. They are also in wonder to us, but if we can return the wonder to them, if we can notice in ourselves how important trees are to us, we begin a connection with that tree. So if you go to a tree and you acknowledge the wonder of the connection that this tree is offering you since before you were born, has offered your parents and grandparents and so on down the millennia. When I was in the megalithic society, already trees were protecting me. When I was a forest dweller, already trees were giving me life. Take this to a tree and then do the grounding exercise. Center in the steadiness of standing. Trees don't run about, you know. Trees stand still for a lifetime. Yeah? I mean, the average tree life is probably similar to an average life. Yes, trees can live hundreds, thousands of years, but many trees only live 30 or 40 years. You know, certain types of trees only live 30 or 40 years. So maybe a tree average life is similar to a human being. Maybe not, but I forget the point I was making there now. But you go to this tree in brotherhood, in wonder, do your grounding. Then I think the next thing I'd like to bring. No, let me throw that open first. Are there any questions on that grounding exercise? Fine. If anybody would like to ask, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll proceed to the next step. I have. Go on. Hans, was that? No, it's Van. Hi.
That was Van.
Van, great. Hi.
In the same fashion, and I understood what you were saying, in the same fashion, we could go into our garden and using very similar visualizations, techniques, etc., have that same communication with all of the plants, even though they're not trees. And that is also, here's the question, a part of dynamic gardening?
Yes, yes, that's a lovely question, observation there, Van. What you'll find when you go to a tree is that because it is so woody and because it is so deeply rooted, it has more presence, more almost consciousness of being there. Whereas if you go to a dandelion, it hardly notices whether it's itself or whether it's just one of its friends. Yeah. And if you go to a little annual, you know, like a lettuce or something that you plant and it comes up quickly and you eat it, their consciousness is very spread out. And if you can go through the lettuce or the dandelion into the wider consciousness of all lettuce, of all dandelion, then indeed you find mighty and wonderful beings that have got a lot of advice to offer. It takes a little bit more holding yourself in order to go out through that plant without getting lost, because if you get lost you won't find the lettuce. Yeah? But if you can stay centered in yourself and go through the lettuce and out, then you can find the lettuce being. Yeah? You can be the center and the periphery. The lettuce will speak to you from the periphery. But if you get lost in the periphery, you won't find the center of the lettuce, so to speak. Yeah? So trees are easier to work with. But great mention, because the next thing I'm going to offer is very relevant to annual plants. It's an archetype. You find it in trees, but it's much more relevant to annual plants. So a great segue. Thank you, Van. What I've got here is a painting of the 7 life processes that my sister did for me. And here you see how all plants go through a process from seeding and the seeds spreading out from where they are, and then the seed lands, and the seed swells, and then the seed shoots, and then the plant leaves. Here we are, let's do it that way up. The plant leaves and produces a big leafing pattern, and then from the center of the leaves the plant shoots up and flowers, and the leaves become less, drier, fewer, drop away, smaller, or eaten, and then the flower drops away, and the fruit develops, and then the fruit hardens and the seeds develop, and then the seeds travel and the seeds land and swell. And this is a sacred process, and if we acknowledge that process bodily, so that we take that process into ourselves, it doesn't just live in our heads, it's not just an idea, and nor are we looking at a plant saying, oh right, I can see from here that you're doing seeding or you're doing leafing or whatever, yeah? But no, we take that into ourselves, then we begin to open ourselves such that the plants can communicate with us. And the thing is, as I mentioned at the beginning, that plants don't speak in words, they speak in gestures. Yeah? So if we gesture a plant, then the plant begins to notice us, because plants in a sense can see gestures. The space the plant occupies is aware of its gesture, and if you do that gesture, the plant goes, oh, I recognize that, that's me. Yeah? So for instance, just going a little bit back, if you were to take a fir tree and stand in front of a fir tree and you go whoosh, chum, 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 on every twig, ticka, 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 the little fir leaves, yeah? The fir tree will begin to notice you if you gesture the way the fir tree grows. Yeah? But if you do that in front of a birch tree, it won't have any understanding of what you're saying. But if you go to a birch tree and you go, ah, 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 foo, foo, where the leaves and then move in the wind, yeah, and this falling gesture of the twigs on the birch tree, yeah. If you do that, the birch tree will go, oh, I know you, I love you. Yeah. And you go to an oak and you go, oh, oh. The oak tree goes, ha, welcome. And you can notice in the oak tree as well how the oak tree creates a barrier with its leaves. Inside the leaves of an oak tree, you have this sense of, this is an inside space, that is my barrier, that is my skin, this is my form, and outside of that is the world. But if you go to a birch tree and you look at the way these twigs are moving and the leaves are moving and the way the light moves right through the birch tree, you realise the birch tree hasn't created a skin like that, but the birch tree is constantly interested in what's happening in the world. The world is flowing through the birch tree all the time, whereas the oak tree is holding itself and it's saying, that's the world, this is my canopy, this is my branches. Yeah? And look at this with other trees. You know, notice, for instance, the holly, how on the holly leaves the light dances and scintillates off the leaves, and every leaf is going doo 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 doo. Yeah, these points that bend down and bend up and bend down. There's this whole sort of spraying of the light, pointy lights. You know, you can see how the holly tree has for a long time been associated with the fixed stars. Everything about the holly tree is star-like. The flowers are small, not blousy at all, but bright white. The berries are small, but they're strong red. Yeah? And the ends of the leaves are small, pointy and sharp. Everything about it is dong, 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 like the stars on a frosty night. Yeah? So notice how the light plays with the holly, how it bounces off the leaves. Whereas if you go to a laurel, for example, or a rhododendron, the light is just sort of, it disappears into the leaves. Yeah? There's no dancing, no bouncing off a rhododendron. Yeah? The flowers are gorgeous, but even they absorb the light in a beautiful way. So go to the holly, notice this dong, dong happening, and go through the branches. So you're now inside the canopy, and you sit down with your back against the trunk and feel the space inside the holly. Extraordinary space. You realise why the wood of the holly, when you cut it open, is white. You can feel something inside that. I won't tell you the whole story. Do that with the holly, because they are extraordinary. The difference between the outside and the inside of a holly is revelatory. Revelatory. Do that with a beech. When you're walking down the street, you know, if there's trees in the street, just feel the space under each tree as you go. Maybe you're walking under a cherry tree, and then next you're walking under a plane. The quality of the space changes. And when you're walking under trees, you can do what I call tree walking. Let me bring the camera down a tiny bit more. So when you're tree walking, you can go through. I'm going to bring it down still further because it's great if you can see my feet. That's pretty good, pretty good. I want you to see my head as well though. You can go through the whole process of the tree life. But before we do tree walking, there was something that side. I wanted to do the 7 life processes as gestures. So let's bring the camera up again. The 7 life processes as gestures. So with the plants in your garden, with the trees, with the plants in the woodland, wherever, yeah, acknowledge how their year turns around these 7 processes. How you have at the beginning this travelling of the seeds, yeah? Whether it's a thistledown floating on the air, or whether it's a spinner from a sycamore tree, or whether it's a berry in the belly of a bird, yeah? Travelling, travelling, travelling. Some plants actually flick their seeds out. Yeah? There's the Himalayan balsam grows on the rivers around here. And when the fruit are ripe, if you touch them, they go boing! And the kids love this. Boing! Pop, and the seeds go, phew, scatter far and wide. So there's travelling, the seeds travel, yeah? And just acknowledge the plant, you know, just say, I recognise this in your process, yeah? And then the seeds land somewhere, whether it's as a bird poo or whatever it is, the seed lands, yeah? And when the seed lands, another process begins. You will have sprouted seeds in your kitchen, I expect. You know that if you don't keep washing them, they go mouldy very quickly. Yeah? And they go mouldy because each seed is putting out these fungus, which I mentioned to you. Yeah? The fungus which are intended to break down the minerals in the soil for their absorption. And if the seed is allowed to do that, what the seed does where it lands is it swells in the moisture and it puts out this fungal gel around it. Yeah? And that process then leads to the bursting of the seed. Yeah? This is a beautiful image that the seed, which is the most perfect thing the plant has produced, at the end of its process, when it's gone through everything else, it has produced a seed. The seed can last hundreds of years and still germinate, you know? The seeds are extraordinary things. So if you look at your own processes, there's things which we think we've achieved, we think are great. If they're actually going to achieve anything, the things we achieve have to break. Yeah? They have to break open, they have to burst, they have to crack, they have to lose their shape. Yeah? So the seed, having done its journey, has landed, is swelling, putting out its fungal gel, and then it bursts, it breaks open. Yeah? And it produces from inside itself a shoot downwards and a shoot upwards. Some plants go up first, some go down first. Some come out of the seed and go up and down. Some come out of the seed and go down and lift the seed up on its shoot. I've got some beans over here. I'll just get them actually because they're right here. I'll show you how beautiful that is. You see, these beans, this is the bean here. The plant has pushed its own seed up into the air to form the first carbon dioxide fixer. Yeah. And then after that it produces leaves. First it sends up the shoots, and then these leaves too. Look, you see here is a bean shell still on the leaves. So those leaves are also inside the bean. Yeah? The bean bursts open, shoots up on its own stalk, producing a root at the same time. And then these leaves, the first leaves, and then from there it starts a new process. This shooting upwards, and then there's a pause. There's always a pause between each of these processes. So first the seed comes and lands, and there's a pause while it absorbs the moisture. And then it puts out this gel and sits there feeling fat. And then it bursts and either rises or shoots, and up it goes and down it goes, and it produces these first two leaves. That's a success, and it waits there in the sun for a minute. And then it begins this leafing process, boom, 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 more and more leaves, until you get the body of the plant fat with leaves. Beautiful, whether it's a dandelion all coming up from the base, or whether it's a little, you know, like this, or like this fella here, yeah, with these purple leaves, lots of leaves, lots of leaves, lots of leaves. And then again there's a pause, and the leafing has reached its maximum, and out of this center of this plant, out of this leafing comes a shoot. And again, this rises up and rises up. And as it rises up, a bud is developing and fattening and finally opening. And the point where the bud opens, the rising up process stops. Yeah? So we've had flying and a pause, swelling and a pause, bursting and a pause, leafing and a pause, shooting and a pause, and then the flower opens. Whoosh! Colour. Colour, a whole new element in the plant's life, whether it's red poppy or a yellow or whatever it is, a blue forget-me-not, colour that you don't find easily in the green world. Yeah? Colour comes out with the flower. The flower is like this moment of, look at me, this moment of celebration of the plant's great beauty. In the sunlight, yeah, something of the sunlight dips down and picks the green of the flower out and makes it more, makes it colour. Yeah, this entry of the flower into a celestial realm that the rest of the plant can't quite touch. Beautiful, beautiful. Now, a flower, you know, if you watch a flower opening and opening and opening, at what point is the flower really most perfect? You know, is it this stage or that stage, or when the bee comes, or what? The flower is constantly getting more and more perfect until you suddenly realise it's already past the point of perfection. Yeah? There is no point at which it says, right, that's it, that's what I wanted. There is no stasis. There's no things are as they should be. It's a flow. And that's so true in life. The machine age has taught us, people have presumed that nature ought to be in balance. It's not, it's in progress. We've been taught that society ought to be in balance. It's not, It's in progress. Our own individual life is in progress, and the plants teach us this. Yeah, the flower gets more and more beautiful until it's already past its best moment. I wonder if that's why they call it a flower. F-L-O-W. It's in flow the whole time. It's a flower. Yeah, this is the flow of the whole plant realm expressed in a moment of beauty, of colour, of delicacy, that then falls away. Yeah? Our greatest achievements, we drop them to the ground because something else lies ahead of us. It might be death, but something lies ahead of us that we still are heading for. And so after the flower stage, after the flower has dropped away, what's happening? The leaves are no longer burgeoning out, nothing's shooting up. Slowly, either from inside or from right behind the flower, something begins to fatten. And slowly, slowly you have the fruit. And this might be something quite simple looking, quite greeny, grey, purpley, browny, or it might be a tomato, yeah? Or it might be a red and yellow apple, or it might be a peach. Yeah? The fruiting stage is quite something in itself. This juiciness, the sweetness, yeah? The fruit of the poppy with its heady juice that you can cut if you get these fat garden poppies, you can cut the head and these beads of rubbery white come out. And if you put those in alcohol, you get laudanum. But I don't use it. It's a powerful remedy not to be messed with. So the plants have got a message in their fruits. The peach is the archetype of a certain attitude to life. Yeah? The walnut is an archetype of another attitude to life. Yeah? So each of the plants expresses its gifts in its fruits in a new way than it did in the flower. In the flower you could see it and feel it. In the fruit you can taste it and experience it in your body. And when the fruit has reached its greatest moment of beauty, something else then happens. Either the fruit falls and rots, or the fruit is inviting itself like a berry to be eaten by a bird, or the fruit dries out and becomes a husk, like a poppy seed husk does. Yeah? And when the fruit dries out, the seeds inside mature. And that's the point at which then again we enter into the travelling. There's this moment where the seeds are waiting on the plant, whether that's then for the bird, or whether it's to be thrown, or whether it's for the wind, or whether it's for the falling. There's this waiting, and then the travel begins. And maybe the apple falls and rolls down the hill, or maybe the apple falls and is eaten by a sheep, or whatever. The travel begins. So we've done these 7 processes of the travelling of the seed, the fattening, feel that fattening and the swelling of the gel around there, and then the bursting open, the breaking of this beautiful pattern, the bursting up and down, the shooting, and then the leafing, like a happy childhood, yeah, growing bigger and bigger, swelling out, creating its environment, and then the shooting up and the blossoming, yeah, like a young person, beautiful to behold, full of clear intent and ideals for their life and the world. And then you have the flower dropping away and you become a parent and life goes on. So feel this then, the shooting up and the flowering, and then the slow fattening, the taking on of the responsibility, the heaviness of the fruit. Feel that, yeah? And then the fruit maybe hardening and shriveling, yeah? And then the seed again bursting out and beginning its journey. So if you do that in nature, the plants will watch you. If you're quiet, if you've done your grounding exercise first, and then you really do these exercises, you can see the plants all turn their attention to you and they go, somebody understands. So you can take all of this into yourself a level deeper. And a wonderful exercise for grounding, for bringing ourselves into the peace of the plant world, of bringing ourselves into connection with the Mother Earth. You know, how often do we walk? Or how often do we get on a bike or jump in a car? Yeah? I had a neighbour years ago. He used to go out for a 4-mile walk, 4-mile run. Very proud of himself he was. And then he'd get in the car and drive 3/4 of a mile into town to do his shopping and drive back. You know? How often do we walk? And when we're walking, do we allow ourselves to be where we are? Or are we thinking about something else? Yeah? Or thinking about what a great photograph that would take? Or maybe we could put this on Facebook? Or, you know, are we allowing ourselves to actually notice the Mother's support? When I put my foot down, the earth does not give. It holds me. Whether that's sharp rocks or mud, sooner or later the earth holds me. That's a gift. That's a gift. So when you put your foot down, what if you were a plant? Your foot is touching the ground. Roots are coming from your foot down into the ground. And the Mother says, yes, I connect with you. I feed you. You feed me. The life of the human being locked up in this mobile body, locked up in our thoughts. How do we make that accessible to the Mother? Yeah. Our dead conceptual thinking is not accessible to the plant world. Only if we allow our thinking to fall off us and refill ourselves with the lights does our thinking become a little bit more flexible. And when we get a new thought, do we try and polish it and perfect it? In which case it becomes dead. Or do we allow it to grow and flee and grow and change and like a flower? Oh, what a beautiful thought, and now it's gone, it's dead. Maybe some fruit and seed will come from it. Yeah? So we allow ourselves to be here, and I'm going to drop the camera down again. So when we bring our foot down to the ground, and we allow the roots to spread, then the Mother and the body connect. Yeah? The life body of the human being, the etheric body of the human being connects with the ground. And when we move the next foot along and put it down again, because we have to lift the other foot. We have to lift the other foot and move it. If we don't lift, if we don't you know what they say, if you keep both feet firmly planted on the ground, you'll never get anywhere. Yeah? We have to enter into uncertainty. We're balancing on one foot, yeah? And then you put the other one down. For a moment you've got both feet on the ground, but immediately you've lifted the other one. And this is it. Our life is a progress of uncertainties. Can we keep our balance? Yeah? And if each time we put our foot down, we allow the roots to enter into the earth, we allow the earth to give us roots, then we are in communication. Our etheric body and the etheric body of the earth connect, and we are fed, and our stress drops away, whether it's electrostress, whatever it is. You know, if you've got a mobile phone mast and you've got a radiation detector, you can tell what's coming off that mast, and if you then step behind a tree, much of it drops away. Yeah? You can be like that if you allow yourself to ground. You just deal with this stuff. So each time your foot touches the ground, you root. The roots form. And when you lift your hind foot, you're pulling the roots out of the earth. But the moment the big toe comes free of the ground, the roots happily let go, give up. And then your foot is just a human foot. And then you swing that human foot forwards and you bring it down to the ground again, and the moment it touches the ground, the mother says, ah, there you are. Here's my roots. Here's your roots. Let's connect. Yeah? And you're grounding again. And then the other foot comes up, and the other foot lifts free, and the roots are pulling out of the soft soil willingly, and the toe comes off the ground, and you have a human foot, and you swing that foot forwards, and you put it down, and you're rooting again. So you're rooting and pulling and lifting free, swinging forwards and rooting, and then pulling and swinging free and coming down and rooting, and the back foot is pulling and swinging free again. Your feet can do this with every step you take, and you ground and you ground and you ground, and the mother loves you and you love the mother, and all the stress flows into the ground. And also the mother hears your intentions. Your etheric body is full of the patterns of your life, many of which are intentionally formed, or even come from unconscious intentions and are formed into your etheric body. And when you root, when you ground, the mother hears your intentions and says, yeah, I can help with that. I can help you ground that. I can help make that happen. You know, like when you put a seed in the soil, the mother says, yep, I can help with that. We'll swell it, we'll welcome its roots, we'll support it while it shoots towards the light. The mother can do the same thing for your hopes and intentions if you root and ground and root and ground in love for the mother with every step you take. It's wonderful. And that's just the feet. There's so much more that happens when we're walking that we're not aware of. Yeah, I know you can't see my head, so I'm going to tip this back a little bit again. Because there's so much more that happens when we are walking. You know, imagine yourself for a moment inside like a mill wheel. Yeah? There's a kind of a mill wheel with slats on it. From under our feet, coming up in front of us, over our heads and down the back, this mill wheel here. Yeah? Here it is. And you see my hand is going this way because this is the way that mill wheel moves, particularly when we're walking. Yeah? You know, like in a film where the wheels on the car are going slowly backwards while it's zipping down the road, you know? You look at the wheels and it's mad. Yeah? But that is happening when we're walking. This movement is happening. And it's marvelous, it's miraculous to watch it. Yogis use this movement also with the breath. You know, when you breathe in, something rises. And then as you breathe out again, it falls down behind you, like that. So you have this movement happening with the in-breath and the out-breath. And that happens when you're walking in the same way. When you lift the back foot, yes, so as you place your foot, let's do it that way. As you place your foot, the energy moves from under that foot, it moves forwards and up. And as it gets to about here, you bring your other foot free, and that energy goes on over your head as your foot is swinging forward. And about this point, your foot connects to the ground again, and then there's this falling happening here. Yeah, as you move forwards, and the back foot lifts and pulls the roots free, and then at the point that that foot comes disconnected from the ground, at that point the energy moves particularly underneath your feet again, and then you're touching the ground with the foot, and up it comes and over the top, and this is happening all the time you're walking. And what also happens is as the energy comes down the last bit at the back there, just before it enters under your feet, that's the travelling process of the seeds. They are travelling and landing. Yeah? That happens in the last bit. And then as you move forward and the energy transfers onto your other foot, the seed swells. And then as you as the energy reaches the big toe, and that's pushing into the ground. At that point that the big toe pushes into the ground, if you're attentive, you might notice the seed bursting, yeah, and the shoot rising and down into the ground, yeah, and then as this foot swings forward, the leafing process, and then you're touching the ground with both, and up comes the stem of the flower, and so on. Yeah, so you can trace the 7 life processes happening in that cycle. You can feel them if you just allow yourself, if you've practiced these gestures, if you've got familiar with the plants, if you're letting the plant speak into you, they will show you how that happens. And this cycle is also the rising and the falling of the sap in the tree, because the sap rises in the sap wood of the tree. So the tree has the heartwood in the center, and then the sapwood around the outside, and the sap rises in the sapwood and goes out into the leaves. And then when it's been transformed into these carbohydrates, it comes into the cambium layer, which is the inner bark, and which is outside the wood. And the falling sap is in the inner bark, and the rising sap is in the outer wood. So these two are happening right next to each other. And in between there's a single layer of cells called the cambium layer. And out of the cambium layer, all the growth in the tree comes. All the wood is produced, all the bark is produced out of the cambium layer. So you can feel how the falling also happens kind of just under your shirt, just on your skin, you know, the falling sap there, and the rising sap just inside you, in your muscle movement maybe, yeah? Your bones are like the heartwood. And you can feel all this happening when you walk. And when you tune into that consciously and make those gestures and allow and connect and give the mother the love of your roots, accept that she is holding on to you. Don't be afraid of that, because she's just as willing to let you go when you lift the other foot. Yeah? When you allow this, when you go with this, when you consciously reenact this, when you become meditatively aware of this, then the plants embrace you with their love and give you their calmness, their groundedness, their accepting nature. The plants will give all those things to you, so that you, like them, can become a co-creator with the love of the sun and the strength of the earth. Thank you.